welcome to November's full licensing committee. Before I open the meeting, I'm just going to introduce everybody so people know who's on the committee and who's attending. I'm Councillor Martin Johnson, Chair of the Licensing Committee. I have my Deputy Chair, Clive Tennant. I've also got other councillors, Gillian Cruz, Councillor Dick Taylor, Councillor Elaine Blezard, Councillor Nick Farmer, Councillor Catherine Scott, Councillor Martin Ward, Councillor Sandra Picking, and as an observer we've got Councillor Maureen Cummins. We have officers who are running the meeting. We have Jane Hindle, Callum Malcolm, officers presenting reports. We've got Christopher Burnett, David Hollis, and we've got a guest who represents the trade who's going to speak on the two items, Chris Woodward. So with that over, I will move things forward and start the agenda. Have we any apologies for absence, Karen?
Yeah, just Councillor Austin.
Thank you for that. We'll move on to item 2, to approve a correct record of the minutes of the meeting of the Licensing Committee held on the 21st of October 2020, pages 1 to 2. Can somebody approve and second them, please? Thank you. Item 3, I have no announcements. Item 4, to note any items which the Chair has agreed to add to the agenda on the grounds of urgency. I have an item to add on the grounds of urgency. So we'll move on to item 5, members' declaration of interest. Members are reminded of the requirement to make an appropriate verbal declaration at the meeting on any item or items on this agenda which they have an interest. Having done so, members are asked to complete a form detailing the declaration, which will be available from the committee services officers at the meeting, and that is Karen Malcolm. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 6. Item 6 is proposal to amend the Council's suitability policy, safeguarding training, pages 3 to 6. And I'll pass over to Chris Burnett to go through the report. Over to you, Chris. Just before Chris starts, can I just make sure all members have their mics on mute, so obviously everybody can hear correctly. Thank you. Over to you, Chris.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I hope you're all well. This is the first of 2 reports which are presented to you this afternoon for approval. Before I start, I think the last meeting there was some difficulty hearing my voice because of feedback. Can everybody hear my voice all right? Or if you can't, or it's muffled, will you tell me now and we can get started? Okay, I'll take that, that's fine. Okay, the purpose of the report today is for the committee to consider the current position in respect of the safeguarding training. At this moment in time, the driver conditions require that any new driver making an application for a licence will be required to complete a safeguarding course within 3 months of the licence being granted. In other words, the council would give a licence if all other elements are in place, and they would allow a period of 3 months for the driver to obtain the safeguarding course. We have reviewed and considered this. We as a council feel it's not the right approach. We haven't had any issues regarding any drivers being involved in incidents that haven't completed a safeguarding course, and I have reviewed all the drivers. We've got none at the moment haven't done a course. However, last year there were a small handful that had gone beyond the 3 months, not done the safeguarding. They now have all been captured for what they expect. They've all now done the safeguarding training. The proposal today, councillors, is that we amend our current position. We think it's entirely appropriate for the safeguarding element to form part of the application process, much the same way as there's a knowledge test, a maths test, an English test. We also propose that the safeguarding element forms part of the application procedure, and if it's not completed successfully, then a new licence will not be issued until it's done. Now, this was considered some time ago, and I know Mr. Woodrow from the trade representation has made one or two comments about the problem before was there weren't enough courses available, and effectively drivers were being required to wait maybe 3 or 4 months before they could do the course, and of course that would have held up them obtaining the license and doing obtaining the badge. That's why the 3 months was given as a period of grace to allow the drivers to get the safeguard qualification. We now propose that we have in place a process where we can increase the number of safeguarding courses. At the moment there are 3. We can certainly increase it to 6. That wouldn't be an issue. We could also include ad hoc courses as and when they're required. So we feel quite confident that we could easily manage new applications and ensure the provisions are there for them to complete safeguarding courses as part of the application process without having undue delay. So the proposal is that we can amend the position we're in now. This proposal is also contained within the draft policy, which some of you members may have seen last month, which is currently out to consultation. Where this would actually sit if you approve it at the moment is a condition of a driver who does the course within 3 months. We would propose that we amend the suitability policy at this stage to ensure that if you approve it, that new drivers must do the course badge. That's a matter for yourselves, councillors, to consider. And just to expand on that a little bit more, we also propose that in addition to safeguarding course forming part of the application procedure, we also propose that there is a continued refresher training course. Licences can be issued for 1 year. Usually they are for 3 years. We would propose that the refresher training is done every 3 years, which is upon renewal of the licence. We're looking at how we can deliver the safeguarding refresher courses, and there's a number of options from within the council and from outside the council with external providers. But we're confident, we're looking at it now, we're confident we'll be able to put in place a refresher training program which will probably be online. And again, we'll be looking to renew to do the refreshers every 3 years. That essentially is the proposal to yourselves, councillors. Don't think there's any much more to add to that, but quite happy to answer any questions or concerns that you may have in relation to that. So please feel free to ask anything you feel concerned about.
Right, thanks, Chris, for that. Yeah, I just one point really. I think it's imperative that a responsible authority, that all licence holders have gone through and passed a safeguarding course before they're actually issued with a badge to drive, residents, people and vulnerable people about in their vehicles. I think that's should be the main starting block for any authority. So that's my point. I fully support this decision to approve this part of the licensing policy. If there's any members have got any questions, if they just let me know in the comments box, and then we'll go through them one by one. Thank you. Right, Elaine, if you would like to ask your question to Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Chris, I just want to get it straight in my mind that any new applicant for a taxi driver, they'll take the test when they're doing all the other tests. So that's that. And then whenever the license is coming up every 3 years, we'll catch all the ones that's been already given a license. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor, pretty much so. There are no drivers at the moment that are not safeguarding trained. We have reviewed it and captured them all. Any new applicant, if approved with today, would have to do the safeguarding course, and then of course we would have to give a period of time to allow the refreshers. If some drivers are looking at renewing in the next week or two, we would have to look at how we can deliver that. We would certainly capture all the renewals as soon as we can. That's in terms of the refreshers. Once the process is in place, we will be able to do that. At the moment in time, councillors, just so you're aware, although we can't refuse to accept new applications, because of COVID, we're not in a position to process applications. So we do have a small amount of time until we start issuing new licences again, and that will give us the opportunity to put in place things that we need to do.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm in agreement with this then, yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Councillor.
Hi, Maureen. You've got a question?
Thank you, Chair. I didn't know whether you would allow me to speak. I just wanted a little bit of clarity on, I mean, if I had a vote, I would fully support this. I think people who are driving, either the public, children or anyone, should be aware of their responsibility around safeguarding for vulnerable people. How often is the refresher? Is it once a year? I'm sorry, that wasn't clear.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. The refreshers we would propose every 3 years. On application, your application, it would be you have to do the safeguarding course if you approve it, and then on renewal every 3 years. So, for example, if a driver applied for a 1-year licence and we approved it, they could get another 1 year and another 1 year, and then at 3 years, our system would capture back the 3 years since they've done the safeguarding. You now have to do a refresher. Hope that.
Chris, can I just say something, please?
Certainly, Councillor.
And I think all members will support this, that if there is an issue with a licence holder before 3 years, that's not serious, but that, as I say, don't mean we remove the licence, but we have, as an authority, we can ask them to do that training or refresher training again. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Chair. There is a power to suspend licences. If you were minded to suspend a licence because of a safeguarding issue, the suspension could be, for example, to ensure the driver revisits the safeguarding course and does it again. You wouldn't suspend a licence technically just as a punishment. You would say, we're suspending a licence because we feel there's a safeguarding issue and we want you to go on a safeguarding course. That would be something that would be acceptable. And of course, because there's so many, if approved, there would be many more safeguarding courses available. We wouldn't be unduly holding a driver up. They would be on the next safeguarding course. We would hope would be more frequent than they are, definitely double what we do now.
I've got a question from Councillor Scott. Chris.
Yes, certainly.
Hello, Chris. This isn't in the report, but I'm just thinking about vulnerable people when we use taxis to take young children to school, and there's a carer there. Would that include the carer having to have safeguarding training or not? Or is that a different issue altogether?
I think that's a different issue altogether, Councillor. That's to do with the carers being approved by the transport services. From what I understand, they do their own checks, where specifically they're talking about safeguarding elements of the drivers.
Thank you.
I've got a question from Councillor Dick Taylor. Go ahead, Dick.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wonder, would there be a charge made to the trade for this test at all?
Yeah, the charge is built into the application procedure. The most recent check that I did up for an online refresher, I think the fee there was round about £3.50. It's not something we've approved yet because we need to look at whether or not refreshers should be done online, or whether we need the drivers in to do the refresher in the same way as they do the knowledge test and other tests. But the actual safeguarding, there's a fee built into the application procedure, and the refresher we would get bigger for that, and I give that fee. But the online one is looking at around about £3 if we go down that.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Chris, I've just got a comment again from Maureen. I feel refreshers should be done more often. Is it because obviously timescales, appointments, making sure that new applicants obviously get in there first? Obviously, if there are growing incidents where things happen that shouldn't happen, we could re-look at this to see whether refresher courses should be done more often than the 3 years that we're proposing at the moment.
Yes, I completely understand that, Chair and Council Committee. I completely understand the position you're in. I think we would have some difficulty and some opposition. I'm sure Mr. Woodrow may agree with this as well. If we were to blanket apply a policy of a safeguarding refresher for example, every year, because a handful of drivers were causing concern, we would have to treat each individual case on its merits. The 3 year is set because that's the renewal period for a licence. But at any stage during that 3 years, there is always the option to take action against the driver if we feel the driver is acting inappropriately. And as I've alluded to previously, there's a number of options available: suspension, revocation, revisiting safeguarding courses. I think if we were to bring it to maybe 1 year, it's a matter for you councillors. If we bring it to 1 year, that would be, I think, an issue. That are we doing it for a small handful of drivers and everyone has to do it? And the other issue is actually the sheer volume of drivers. We have about, off the top of it, about 1,400 licensed drivers, and deliver a package every year to do that would take an awful lot of managing, which we would have to do if it was approved, if it's what the Council Committee wanted us to do. But it would be, I'm not sure whether that would be proportionate to what we have at the moment.
Chris, just a point then, if I'm a licensed driver for 12 months and I do the safeguarding, then I decide to go into another trade, I've not done anything wrong, but then I decide to come back in 6 months later, I have to do the safeguarding again. That doesn't carry over for 3 years for me. Is that correct? Is that how I understand it?
We of course there would have to be DBS check done as well as a new applicant, but we would probably take the view that a new application, it would have to be a new safeguarding. We would take that view. I would think it's a good question. Yeah, I think a new application would mean a new safeguarding. I think partly because the driver would have been out of the trade, and the role of a taxi or private hire driver comes with its problems. If you're outside of the period of time, you need to be understanding what the issues are to come back into it.
Thanks, Chris. I know Chris Woodrow didn't want to say anything, he said, on this issue, but I just wondered if he had any points while we're talking about it.
Thank you, Chair. Broadly speaking, the association all support the need for safeguarding. The reason I said I was going to address you on tinted glass only and not safeguarding is we asked the membership to express their views through your web portal. Although all of the associations support safeguarding, the need for safeguarding, traditionally there's a slight difference between the views of operators and the views of drivers. Operators tend to not like any barriers to somebody new coming into the trade. But since we had that conversation, and it's addressed at 7.3 in your report, which is at page 5, as Chris Burnett's already said, the council are aware that there'll be a need to increase the number of courses available. So I think that will put any fears at rest from any operator that might have had them. But all I can really say is that the trade as a whole do support the need for safeguarding.
Thank you, Chris, for that. Has any other members got any other comments or questions before we take a vote on this? Elaine?
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify what we're voting on, a taxi licence is guaranteed for a year. After that year, it'll be every 3 years that they're tested. If they come out of the licensing trade, whether it's 1 month, 6 months, 8 months, 2 year or whatever, they still have to take all the tests again, including the safeguarding test. Have I got that right?
That's how I understand it. I'll just go back to get clarification from Chris.
Yes, the application can be for a 3-year licence, not a 1 year. You can have a 1 year licence, generally a 3-year licence. So the application, the recommendation today is that safeguarding forms part of the application process for a new driver, that it's a refresher that's mandatory at 3 years when licence is generally a review. We would look at anybody who leaves the trade comes back into the trade. I think the initial comment was 6 months. We haven't a provision for how long they're out of the trade. I think it would be fair to be on its merits. Certainly, any significant period of time out of the trade, we would expect safeguarding to be back as a new applicant. I hope that clarified.
You're just breaking up a little bit, Chris.
Sorry, we would expect anybody that comes out of the trade and then wants to come back in, they would have to redo the course. We would treat every case on its merits, but if there's been a significant amount of time out of the trade, we would expect them to do the course, the safeguarding for license issued.
And just for clarification, like raised earlier, that if something happened that the department or the committee could ask for that training to be done for an individual at any time, regardless of if it were before 3 years, yes?
Absolutely, Chair. The statute regulations issued back in 2020 in July of the summer, they put safeguarding and vulnerable persons at the heart of the statute regulations. So, of course, if the committee had any concerns at all or any issue regarding that, you would have the power to ensure the private police and other safeguarding costs and what to do.
Thanks for that, Chris. If nobody else has any questions or comments, if nobody makes any points, and I'll take that as we approve that policy to the licensing approval.
Move it, Chair.
So as everybody's not made any negative comments, we'll take that as approved. Thank you. Right, thank you for that, everybody. Right, we'll move on to item 7, proposal to amend the council's window tint requirement for licensed hackney carriage and private hire vehicles. You'll find the report on pages 7 to 11, and I think it's back over to you, Chris.
It is, Chair. Thank you very much. I feel like I'm doing all the talking at the moment. I do apologise. Right, the window tint report. Okay. The current position in relation to tinted windows, and it's certainly a topic of a lot of conversation. The current policy in Wakefield is that the level is 70% transmission of light through the windows. If that level is reduced, 65-60, it means less light goes through the windows. So the lower the percentage, the darker the light, just so as you're aware of how it works. The law requires a front windscreen to have a 75% transmission and the front windows to be 70% transmission. That's something that can't be tampered with. So what we have at the moment is a 70% transmission of light. Now I know Mr. Woodrow's here and he will no doubt address in respect to research that's been done. We considered this as a council last year. We looked at a number of vehicles and looked at the transmission of light through the vehicles and whether or not we pose a safeguarding issue or a risk if the windows were dark. The main issue for the vehicles is that as soon as you try to improve the quality or the specification of a vehicle, it automatically or nearly always means that the windows are used as a standard with darker tints. What has had to happen is the drivers have tried to improve the quality of the vehicles by buying a higher spec, but they've then been caused to remove the windows and replace them with windows which conform to 70% transmission of light or higher. That has caused a little bit of an impasse in that there's not as much access to vehicles, and as vehicles improve more and more, we are finding that the level of tints are lower and lower and lower, and more difficult for the drivers to get vehicles that specify the requirements. Now, you'll see from the report, I just set out a very brief outline, a sketch of how where our concerns are, and the concerns around 5.5 of the report. If the scenario is such that we as an authority must make sure that safeguarding is at the heart of what we do. We can't be driven by anything else, must be driven by safeguarding to start with. Deregulation in 2015 made life very difficult for authority. And the current position is stuck that each authority has a different level of window in requirement. And I'll come to those in a moment, councillors, because it may give you some help when you come into a decision. If a vehicle, for example, in another authority has a requirement that window tint will only have to be the manufacturer's specification, so window tint in another authority could be approved at 30%. If they tried to license the vehicle in Wakefield, it would automatically be rejected because it doesn't satisfy our current level of window tint policy. Because of the deregulation, technically that vehicle is taken down to another authority where that level of tint would be acceptable. It could be licensed as a vehicle in another authority. The operator in Wakefield, provided that operator gets an operator's license in that other authority, and that vehicle is driven by that authority's driver, that vehicle potentially, as long as certain circumstances are in place under subcontracting, that vehicle that we would refuse as an authority under our current specification could actually lawfully drive in Wakefield under an out-of-town plate. So effectively, you've got a position where darkened windows in vehicles are still being used in Wakefield. And you may, councillors, I'm sure you will have seen vehicles with a variety of different plates within the Wakefield district. Now, I wouldn't say that's the driving force behind it, because we have to have one very clear eye on safeguarding. But as it stands at the moment, there is, to my knowledge, no direct evidence that issues such as DSE have been directly attributable to windows that are darkened in vehicles. We need to get this absolutely clear. We're not trying to promote any kind of privacy glass, and I don't think the trade are looking at promoting any kind of privacy glass. What we're seeking to do is to try to assist where possible and get the balance right. That there is a better quality of vehicle, but that there is no risk safeguarding. If it assists you at all, I have done a few bits of research around other authorities. What do other authorities do? What do they approve as their level of window tint? Well, as I said, 75% must be through the front windscreen and 70% through the side windows. If we go up to, for example, Stockton, North Tyneside, their level is set at 34%. Those ours is 70%. We come further south from the Yorkshire area into South Yorkshire, rather have set theirs at 70%. Wolverhampton, they require factory fitted glass, that's all they say, as long as it's factory fitted. If we then come back to within the joint authorities, the authorities within West Yorkshire, York have set theirs at 50%, Alderdale are at 45%, Leeds are at 70%, Bradford require the current DVS guidelines, driver vehicle standards guidelines, and of course that is 70% at the front and 75% through the front windscreen. It would suggest it's factory fitted. As long as the factory fitted windows, they would be approved. And if we go to Kirklees, they've reduced theirs to as little as 21%. So you'll see, councillors, it is a little bit of a, I hate to say, a lottery in that different authorities have different requirements. We've always got to have one mind on how we look after the licensed trade within our district. But by sticking at 70% doesn't necessarily mean that all vehicles operating in Wakefield will have that standard, because out-of-town vehicles would be permitted. They would have potentially a lower standard of vehicle. So what we seek, councillors, is consideration from yourselves today to look at reducing the standard the level of tint to 35%, and we would suggest if you were minded to do that, we'd be looking at considering a 5% tolerance level. That's just to give a small amount of leeway when the vehicle the tint to be checked. We'd also look, you'll see the options appraisal at 6.1. We would ask you to consider whether or not a 6-month extension to the existing grandfather rights would be considered. At the moment, grandfather rights have been extended to 1st of March 2021. This is a matter for yourselves if you're minded to extend the grandfather right. It's a matter for you to consider. But essentially, councillors, what we're looking at is the consideration of bringing the tint level down to 35%, which will give broader access to vehicles. And there's a number of other issues that are connected to that, and I think they're set out in the very helpful letter from Mr. Woodrow, which has been circulated to yourselves. I don't propose to go into any more detail than that. I'm quite happy to answer any questions you've got about. We've also got Dave Hollis, who has been very heavily involved in the grandfather act and the vehicle emissions and other related issues. So if I can't respond to the questions, certainly we're available in any questions you have. So over to you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Chris. I've just got a few comments to make, then I'll open it up to the members for their comments or questions. So basically, by doing what we're doing, it's going to allow the trade to, when they purchase a new vehicle, to have a more modern, up-to-date, environmentally friendly vehicle with better, as I would say, for the fair paying public that use it. It's going to be a better ride, better braking, etc., etc., because that's what comes with it. We're not going to approve privacy glass. This is just a tinted glass, lowering the percentage that can still be seen through. Because I know I went up to Newton Bar along with Councillor Cummins a while ago, and they did a demo for us there, and obviously that was helpful. So I'm happy with that. My only other thing that I'd like to put to members regarding the 6-month extension, I'm looking to extend that to 18 months. I know it sounds a lot, but the reason why is obviously there's a cost of buying a new vehicle. Licence holders haven't had a lot of work in the last 8 to 10 months. The COVID is still going on, and we've got the Brexit that's going to hit us. So there may be quite a number of issues that may restrict them to get it in that 6-month limit. So I'm proposing that we extend that to 18 months. But I'll let other members ask questions or comments on that, and now I'll open it up. If you just want to put it in the question box, and then we'll go from there. Thank you. Oh, just before I go to that, Chris Woodrow, once members have had their questions and comments, then I'll come back to you for your input. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Has anybody got any comments or questions?
I think there's one from Councillor Taylor.
Right, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. We've been on with this for over 4 years, kicking it into the long grass most of the time. My views on this, it follows on from what we said earlier on about safeguarding. I totally agree that safeguarding is the top of the agenda, and our people in this district should be safeguarded. However, if we're giving someone a licence to drive a taxi, we trust in them. They've got to have a DBS, so we trust in them. We're allowing them to run about in cars, taking the local people up and down at all times of the day and night. And if we can trust them to do that, what difference will it make that the windows are a little bit more obscure than clear glass? I just feel that we've got to trust our taxi drivers. We're making them do safeguarding, we're making them do all these other tests, you know, so surely we can trust them all together. And I would definitely support the 35%. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Before you come back, Chris, can I ask Councillor Tennant, then Councillor Blezard to ask their questions, because they may be all the same type of question. So if we go over to Clive.
Thanks, Chair. Mine's a comment, actually. I fully support the amendment on tinted glass, and I also support the 18-month extension on grandfather rights to March 2022. As I know, there's many drivers who are really struggling financially at the moment. There's no airport runs. I mean, that's totally gone out at window at present. And there's no people using hospitality venues either, so they are really, really struggling. And as you mentioned, Chair, we don't know what implications of Brexit. There could be tariffs put on vehicles that's imported. So I think it's going to be a long, drawn-out job. So I support the 18-month extension.
Thanks for that, Clive. Elaine?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with what Clive said. We're in these times that we're in, and it's hard getting a standard of living for any taxi driver at minute. So I can honestly say that, yeah, I agree with that as well.
Anybody else have any comments or questions before I go back to Chris for his comments? Chris Burnett, not Chris Woodrow yet. Back to you, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, councillors, for all those comments. I think it's very, very easy to, as you mentioned, I think Councillor Tennant mentioned it, to forget the fact that drivers do go through a rigorous process before they're issued with a badge. And I think, unfortunately, the press sometimes or usually would report the bad issues, but very rarely do we talk about the good issues with the taxi trade. I've been in Wakefield a year. There's some very, very good taxi drivers. There's some very, very good operators. And I do agree that the starting point is that they have gone through rigorous tests. That's not to say they couldn't commit offences, because we do see that. But I do take note of what you say, Councillor, is starting point is they must be fit and proper before they obtain the licence. And the second issue is we aren't seeking privacy glass. And my understanding is the trade are not seeking privacy glass either. We're just looking at making better quality vehicles more accessible to drivers and working with the trade. So I welcome all the comments, Council. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. I'll go over to Chris Woodrow now. Thanks very much for your letter, Chris, dated the 12th of October 2020 regarding tinted glass. So over to you to make your comments representing the trade.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Taylor says, this issue has been in the background for quite some time, and I don't seek to lecture at length about items I've already written about. I was here more to answer questions on behalf of the association, if there were any. What I will say briefly is that the Wakefield District Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Association fully supports the proposal at 6.1. As Mr. Burnett has already said, the trade is seeking to licence modern vehicles, standard vehicles, not vehicles with privacy glass. That's always been the case. There is no support for privacy glass. And officers have very sensibly gone out and done an exercise where they've measured the light transparency on forecourts of various garages and what have you. And that's how they've arrived at the proposed 35% light transmission with a 5% tolerance. And that's the correct approach. It's an evidence-based approach. If they set the light transmission at that level, then drivers will be able to go and buy a modern vehicle and license it. They won't be able to license a privacy glass vehicle. That's exactly how it should be. And I think the report at 7.3 and 7.4 makes clear that low emission vehicles and ULEV, that's the ultra low emission vehicles, are being manufactured with darker glass. It's partly because it reduces carbon emissions by less light entering the car, less sunlight entering the car. There's less need for air conditioning. It reduces emissions. It will, without a doubt, enable drivers to buy vehicles which are greener, if I can use that term. There's not a week goes by where I don't get a driver on the telephone. Toyota Prius seems to be the most popular one at the moment, but I've had many drivers ring me and say, I want to buy a Toyota Prius. I can't because it won't pass the glass requirements. And if these changes are implemented, your modern environmentally friendly vehicles will become licensed, and there'll be no need for drivers to seek an operator which will license a vehicle through another borough. That's addressed in your report as well. And I think I can speak on behalf of the majority of operators in Wakefield would far rather, and this is credit to them, they would far rather license the vehicles through Wakefield than through another council, another authority. And I would fully support Councillor Johnson's comments about the grandfather rights. It's addressed at 6.1, but I think he's absolutely correct when he says that 18 months is more suitable given the current pandemic. I would fully support that suggestion that any grandfather rights extension is 18 months. And finally, just to reiterate and endorse Councillor Taylor's comments, the safeguarding isn't an issue. The checks and balances are already there. The driver is, he's gone through that rigorous procedure. He's got DBS checks. And I think Councillor Taylor identifies a very important point, and I would just agree with these comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Woodrow. Has anybody else got any other comments or questions before we ask members to approve this report, but also approve the 6.3 regarding extending the grandfather rights to 18 months? If nobody has no other comments or questions, then I'll take my blank question box as everybody agreeing to this approval of the policy for the licensing of the private hire and hackney carriage vehicles.
Move it, Chair.
Second it, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, just on that then, Chris, when will this condition come into place? Because obviously people might be wanting to get a vehicle sooner rather than later if they've been asking about it in the last week or so.
I'm sorry, Chair, is that me?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. So as it stands, we're approving the level of tint to be dropped to 35% with a 5% tolerance, and the grandfather rights extended for 18 months. So it would become effective from today. Right. But of course, vehicles that are currently not satisfying the requirement would have the grandfather rights extended 18 months. And I'm assuming the 18 months from today.
Yeah. Yes. Is that's what we agreed? What was it, to March 2022?
The current position is that the grandfather rights were extended until the 1st of March 2021. That's where we are currently. So the proposal, when you say 18 months, are we saying it's 12 months from the 1st of March 2021 or 18 months from there?
18 months. 18 months from that day, Chris.
From the 1st of March 2021?
Yes. Yeah.
Fine, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that? Any? Councillor Blizzard just wants maybe some clarification or other question, Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think March 21, I don't think we're giving them long enough. I think it has to be 2022.
Elaine, yeah.
Yes, correct. The current grandfather rights have been extended already to the 1st March 2021. That's where they are now. But with the additional grandfather rights added today, that will take beyond the 18 months from then. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Has anybody else got any other points or comments before we? Councillor Cruz is typing a message, I'm told. Councillor Cruz?
Hi, yeah, I approve the 18-month period. I think they'll need that time to adapt, and it's only fair given the current circumstances. That's all I was going to say, really.
Thank you, Jude. I think we'd approved it. We're just getting some clarification on the dates when it would start and when it would end. So we've approved them 2 reports. I thank officers for their report and the work that's gone into that report. For this point, the information is. Thank Councillor Cummins for her input into the meeting and everybody else. So with that, I will close the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Take care, be safe, and I'll see you at the next full licensing meeting, or not before. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.